Across the pond with Barry and Chad.
Welcome back to Across the Pond. We are back with a late evening edition. We've not done one of these for a little while, Barry. But I was just saying it's kind of cool, actually. It's kind of cool having a little bit of time after the end of the workday to go through for a little walk or a cycle along the river or something like that, and then return feeling a bit fresh. Where typically it's kind of rush at the end of the workday. So yeah, I'm feeling quite zen right now and ready to get into our episode. You've also done some kind of running around, and I'm sure you're feeling pretty fresh too.
Chad, I don't know what you're talking about. I've been practicing for Across the Pond for the last 4 hours. Why haven't you been getting ready, man? You've been running around doing nothing. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, I've been in hockey, Chad. I'm back at hockey, which is amazing. I tore my hamstring a couple months ago and been in this long rehab process.
Yep.
And the last 2 days, I finally got back to training and finally starting to try and get back into things and trying to ease into it, Chad. But I think it's difficult when your instincts are there and you want to chase after the ball. You want to go back to 100% and you got to try and hold back. And I was not good at doing that. But I survived 2 training sessions so far and haven't torn it again yet. So slow and steady wins the race.
This is good. Yeah, very impressive. Always good to show a bit of restraint, especially with some of these injuries. They have a way of repeating themselves. I don't know about the hamstring. I've not had that one before. But, you know, I had a dislocated shoulder and I was doing a kind of mud race the other day. Did a little grip and I felt something pull in not such a great place. So it is just that good reminder to kind of build it up slowly, build up that strength again. So good thing you're exercising some restraint in that regard. I mean, this week, Barry, I have to touch on here the very first time since lockdown, since the first lockdown, that I went into a theater, which was really quite exciting as well. So, you know, feeling quite chuffed and buzzed about that. I mean, I know we're in a pretty much, you know, non-lockdown thing right now in the UK, but I've not really been taking too much advantage of it. I've kind of stuck with the lockdown habits, spending a lot of time at home, all that kind of stuff. So it was nice to be back in the theater again. And what else to watch than Les Mis, but for this time, a staged concert edition, which I found very, very interesting. Yes, certainly nothing I've seen before, where you've kind of got like a little bit of acting and kind of gesturing what it is that's happening in the storyline, but obviously the bulk of the focus is on the music and on the vocals, and, you know, what incredible music there as well. So loved that, and you know, your recommendation was high on that particular piece of just the soundtrack of the musical.
Yeah, I mean, Les Mis is that iconic West End show. I think it might be one of the longest running shows on the West End, and it's one of those shows you kind of have to see in London. It's got that vibe, and it's really home is London. And I remember I saw it when I was there, and I was absolutely blown away by the quality of the singing and just kind of the way they put the show on. And even though you only saw the music performed, Les Mis is one of those shows where it's music from start to finish. So it's different to a show that you're going to miss a lot in between.
Sure.
So I feel like you can still follow the storyline, still get a sense of what's going on. And I, for one, am extremely jealous, Chad. I was so jealous when you told me. I was like, damn it, Chad, why not me? So I have to live vicariously through you. And yeah, Les Mis is an unbelievable show. It really was really cool.
Yeah, it's quite the cast as well. I mean, you know, obviously quite a big cast, but they've gone for some of the heavyweights to pull this one through, and I think it is a limited run, which has been extended now a couple of times due to popular demand. So, you know, if you are in London, do go and check it out. The great thing is there's an app. I think it's called Today Ticks for anyone who does live this side. You literally just go on the day and try and figure out if you can get a deal. So I think at 10 o'clock every day they release rush tickets, and in our case, I think we only paid £25 per ticket, and you know, you're not always going to get the best seat, but any seat in the house is a good seat. So yeah, definitely recommend doing it that way. And now that we can, there's another one that's on my list and high up on my list, Barry, and that's a musical that I actually did when I was in school, called Anything Goes, and that's now on at the Barbican Theatre, and some pretty big names there too. So yeah, really excited. You know, just the buzz and it's all, you know, that level of normality that we like again.
And one more tip, if you're using that Today Ticks app, which I think is great, if you want to get better seats, a good tip is to book individually. So if you're going with a
Right.
partner, you're going with a group of friends, if you book like individually and you just say, cool, we're not going to sit together, we'll meet up at half time, you'll get those random empty seats that are in between
Right.
couples and groups of friends much closer to the front. And so
Okay.
a little tip there if you want to get better seats. But that's definitely the way to do it. When I was there, that's all I did. Go pick up the tickets in Leicester Square, and then you're good to go. And always good fun there. And so I'm very jealous, Chad. I'm looking forward to hearing more of your theatre antics over the coming weeks. And I'm going to have to rely on you for what's going on in the world of theatre.
It's all good. All we need now is for South Africa to pop off of that red list, which, if I'm honest, I don't understand why it's on, to be completely honest. So India was released off the red list last week or the week before. And as we know, there was the Delta variant, which, kind of emerged from India. And that variant has not been as worrisome as everyone has thought in the UK. The UK's vaccines have proved pretty effective against it. But that's now the dominant variant in South Africa too, isn't it? As far as I understand. So what's the reason for, pulling India off and keeping South Africa on? There's a petition. Any South African who's listening to this right now, go and search for that UK petition to take South Africa off of the red list. I think it's already over 10,000 signatures, of which mine, of course, was one. And now it needs a government response. But I think if it gets to 100,000, then it'll be kind of debated in Parliament. Don't know if there's any point or not of that, but we put that wet ink where it needs to go, Barry.
Indeed, Chad, and I couldn't agree more. I think we've got over our third wave this side, and things are much more stable. Case numbers have come down a lot, and vaccinations are accelerating. So hopefully in the coming weeks, we're going to see it. I've got my first jab booked for the 4th of September, so very excited about that. And so hopefully the quicker the better, and I can come get on a plane and come visit you, Chad. That's the goal, buddy.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. I mean, it's been so long, my gosh. And when you do come, Barry, and when you do book those tickets and pick them up, you've got a new way to pay for them, I believe.
I do, Chad. Finally, 18 years later, I finally have Apple Pay that I can use. We chatted about it a couple of weeks ago, probably a couple of months ago now. I came into South Africa for the first time, and finally my bank, FNB, has got on the bandwagon, and I got a nice little push notification. So I've now added my credit card to my Apple Wallet. I haven't tried it yet, Chad, but I must find an excuse to try it because I basically haven't left the house. But when I leave the house next, we'll give it a go, and we'll see what Apple Pay is all about.
And how many of the merchants that side are ready for it? I mean, does it just rely on normal contactless technology, or do the merchants need to be geared up as well?
Yeah, so that's where South Africa is actually quite ahead. We were much further ahead with the contactless stuff than a lot of other countries around the world. So I would say 90% of merchants and point of sale devices right now have a contactless kind of capability. And so as far as I understand, you just pull out the wallet on your phone, tap it, and you should be good to go. So that's one of the things. One of the things South Africa has done right is gone to contactless very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And tap and go has been kind of the standard here for the last 5 or 6 years. So yeah, that infrastructure is all in place. It's just a matter of testing it now and seeing if it works, Jed.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, hopefully that day comes soon and we get to go and do some catering out in the streets of London, Barry. But until then, let's get into the week that was.
The week that was.
Chad, we're starting this week in the world of football or soccer, whichever way you want to call it, and not only with world of football, but the number one player in the world, and potentially, I would say the number one player of all time, a man by the name of Lionel Messi. And even if you're not into soccer, I'm sure you've heard that name or you've seen it somewhere. He's an absolute global superstar, widely regarded as the best player of all time. Sure. And he has been at Football Club Barcelona in Spain for his entire career. He started there as a 9-year-old and made the leaps up the leagues to make his debut, I think at 17, and basically became Barcelona's most successful player, winning them every single trophy you can think of over his career. And he got to the stage now where he was about 32 years old. He's won everything. He just recently won the Copa America with Argentina, his very first national trophy, which kind of cemented him as the absolute greatest of all time. And then there was this huge drama around his contract in the last couple of weeks, Chad. And unfortunately for Barcelona fans and for a lot of football fans around the world, the Messi era at Barcelona has ended. Even though he wanted to stay, even though Barcelona wanted to sign him, they weren't allowed to because of the legal regulations around the wages and stuff in Spain. And so out of nowhere, almost overnight, they announced that instead of signing a new contract like everyone thought he was going to, he was all of a sudden out of Barcelona. He gave a very tearful press conference. Obviously, it's been his childhood dream. It's been his childhood club. He is Barcelona. If you think Barcelona, you think Lionel Messi. And all of a sudden, he's now been transferred to Paris Saint-Germain in Paris. And so really crazy times there, Chad. Have you heard about the story? Have you been following any of it?
So to be honest, I'm not huge in the soccer or football community, as you know, Barry. But it did of course cross up across my feed, and I saw it here. So I was keen to just not look into it too deeply because I wanted to hear it from you. But yeah, I mean that's just kind of crazy. You surely would have thought there would be enough kind of advisors and who have scanned through the regulations in the land, and when it came time to renew that contract, knew all of the facts at hand, to be able to do that. So I'm really surprised that no one anticipated this sooner. Like you say, for a player who is and breathes and lives the city that he plays for or has played for, I would have even expected maybe to see some change in regulation. I mean, he is that big a player to consider looking at why this regulation is in place. So what is the exact regulation? You say it's fair play regulations. Has it got to do with how many contracts you're allowed to roll? Has it got to do with the amount you've earned over a certain period of time? What is it actually that stopped this from happening?
Yeah, so that's the $1 million question, and the answer is finances, Chad. The answer is finances, and what's in place in Spain is a bunch of rules to try and keep football fair, to try and make sure that clubs can't just go and get hundreds of millions of dollars of debt, buy all these amazing players, and then outcompete with the clubs who are trying to do it in a relatively economically sustainable way, right? And so there's various regulations, and I think the one that kind of got tripped up here was you're only allowed to spend, I think, up to 95% of your revenue on player wages, right? So you can't just go into debt unnecessarily. Every single year, whatever your turnover is for the year, you can only spend up to 95% of that on wages. And Barcelona are in debt to the tune of hundreds of millions of euros, Chad. They've been in a really, really difficult situation in the last couple of years. COVID-19 has obviously been a big impact on their receipts and their revenues for the last year and a half. And they, for some unknown reason, they've just been spending and spending and spending over the last 3 years. They've spent hundreds of millions of euros on players trying to get back to the top of where they were, because they kind of fell a little bit from the top few teams. In the last couple of years, Chad, they haven't been the same Barcelona that we saw in 2015 and 2016. And so they've been trying to get back up to it and spending crazy amounts of money. And so when it came to renew Messi's contract, I mean, Messi's expensive, right? He's the number one player in the world. So he's an expensive player to sign. And they had agreed that he's going to take a 50% pay cut in order to get under this level. So the idea was that, cool, Messi agreed 50% pay cut, which is big for the greatest player in the world.
Sure, yeah.
But he wanted to stay at Barcelona, so he was willing to do whatever it took. And so when he was driving to Barcelona that morning, he was expecting to sign that contract. What I think happened was that Barcelona were trying to sell other players in the background to get that number to where it needed to be. They were assuming that they were going to be able to sell 3 or 4 of their bigger players to get the wage bill down in order to make that Messi contract work. And I think at the last minute, they couldn't sell those players, or something else came. I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but they just weren't allowed to sign that contract, even at 50%. And the funny thing is, Chad, even if you played for free, they still wouldn't have been able to sign him. That's how bad their finances were. And so it's an absolute own goal from Barcelona. It makes them look terrible when it comes to management, when it comes to managing the club. And it's been a huge hit. I mean, I saw some video footage of the Barcelona guys training without Messi, and the mood and the morale is just absolutely destroyed, Chad. And so a really, really tough situation. As any football fan, we think Messi in a Barcelona shirt, it's going to be very strange to see him in something else, especially when we know that he didn't actually want to move.
Wow, that's crazy. And I don't get how it's possible, like you say, with all of the other players, how at his current wage, even at his current wage, he should have been able to stay with the current selection of players. I don't economically understand how this happened. How, like you say, even if he was playing for free, it still wouldn't have been possible. They've seriously scored an own goal here, and I just don't get how that's possible. Knowing that regulation, and it does seem like a very fair one. To spend 95% of your revenues. I mean, that's still a very high number.
A lot of money.
For a club that still has to make a profit. You know what I mean. So yeah, that's just crazy. I don't understand how that is even possible. Hopefully they kind of there should certainly be some inquiries to try and understand what they're actually doing there, because that's definitely not a sustainable way to run a club. So yeah, that is going to be hard. I guess the trickiest part is for all of those Barcelona supporters. What do they do now? Do they switch in the tournaments that include France as well, or do they stick to their side? What is your feeling?
Yeah, it's hard, Chad, because a bunch of them went to Barcelona to play with Messi. Messi was a big draw card. A big name, Sergio Aguero, who was the best Man City player for the last couple of years, just literally this season went to Barcelona to play with his Argentinian mate Messi. And so he must be absolutely flabbergasted to arrive there. He's moved his family across countries. He's kind of made this huge change, and then Messi's gone. And so, yeah, I don't know if Barcelona are going to be able to keep their top players because a lot of them want to play with Messi. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in the aftermath, Chad. Just a really, really nasty situation. And for someone like Messi, he's not going to get like the send-off. He's not going to get all these things that he should have got at the end of his Barcelona career, because he's literally jumped on a plane, went to Paris, and he's in a Paris shirt straight away. So it's a bit of a sad one, to be honest, from the neutral.
Yeah, no, really, really, really sad. And we know how, people in Barcelona love their football. I mean, I've been to Camp Nou before, just the passion, even the little kids in the grounds. There's something about that, that Catalunya, sort of spirit in the football. So that's going to be a massive hit just to the city, and one of my favorite cities in the world, definitely.
Yeah, definitely, Chad. So hopefully we can figure out what went wrong in that situation and Barcelona can try and get back on their feet. But there's a mountain of debt to dig through. So it's going to take a while, Chad. And it might take a couple of years of rebuilding to get to the point where they're at a more sustainable position where they can start to compete again. But if you're a Barcelona fan right now, my condolences.
Yeah, sorry for all of those supporters. Next thing that happened this week, Barry, is we saw a pretty much a landmark report released. So it's an IPCC report. As far as I understand, 234 authors collaborated on putting this report together. This is only, also to just clarify, it's the first part of the report as far as I understand. There's another part that's coming next year. But like I said, a collaboration of 234 authors, 66 countries involved as well. And basically looking into climate change from a scientific point of view, and effectively gathering all of that evidence up together and producing one document that is the authority of climate change and effectively what we're doing to the planet. And it definitely seems to be a warning sign of all warning signs to the humans on this planet. They've also compiled a summary for sort of world leaders, and of course we've got a summit that's happening later on this year. So that the timing of this is of course pretty interesting to note. But some of the things that were just said in this report, Barry, is basically that there's an unequivocal, and that's a very strong piece of language that was used here. They're basically stating that human influence is warming up the planet. And they've said that is an unequivocal relationship, which is a change, I believe, from previous reports. Very strong wording on this is where we are and this is what we've done. Here's where we're at. So there aren't currently in this report any recommendations or things to improve on. How do we get this down with practical measures? But I believe that could be seen in the next part that'll be released in 2022. But just hitting the basics. So obviously, some of this is very technical stuff. There's thousands of pages in this report. I think some people are still digesting it. But it's certainly there's nothing new here, Barry. But it is that confirmation of what we've been talking about for a long period of time. And it's just that waking call, really, to everyone who has been a little bit doubtful of it, who's been kind of trying to play it down, say it's not as serious as it is. Effectively, one of the headlines from this report is that the global average temperature could rise and exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial age levels in the next 20 years. And that is 10 years sooner than we had previously expected before. So clearly a lot that needs to be done. Obviously as this is released, and just in terms of the timing of it, Barry, have you seen all the fires that have been happening in Greece and Turkey? Italy's also got some fires now with some excessively hot temperatures and just droughts. And it's just this extreme weather that we now know for sure is because of us.
Yeah, Chad, I was actually on a call with one of my clients who are in Greece at the moment, and he was saying how bad the fires were, and he was telling me about the situation on the ground. It's really, really bad there. And it's a reminder of this problem. And I think the COVID pandemic has kind of distracted us a little bit from it. We haven't looked at it for a while. So maybe this report is timed really well to kind of bring it back to the top of the news and back to our consciousness, and remind us that this problem is still very much in our midst. And 1.5 degrees might not sound like a lot to some people, but if you look at it and you look at the scientific kind of understanding, it's a lot. It's a big number when you're considering a global average, and it's not something we can afford to just sit back and take. It's something we have to take action on. And I think that it's not, we shouldn't be panicking necessarily, but we have to be taking like really drastic proactive action to reduce our carbon footprint, try and find new ways to fight this thing. And it's important that we get this multi-country collaboration. So I like the fact that it's got hundreds of authors. I like the fact that it's got people from all around the world, because this is not a problem that one country can solve. It's not like we can decide, cool, for our country we're going to do this and then everything's going to be fine. It's like, no. We all share the same ozone layer. We all share the same Earth. We need to come together as a human experiment and really kind of make the difference that we need to if we're going to adapt.
Absolutely. And I guess the thing with some of these models that are included in the report is that if we do take action now, some of this can be reversed to an extent. So there are projections in there, where if we carry on with our current level of CO2 emissions, what it could look like, what a drastic reduction could look like. I mean, it is possible if we do have a drastic reduction that we can kind of sit below that 2 degree increase, or even lower than that, depending on where we go. Some of the damage is done already. Some of the glaciers have melted, and some of those are just not going to form again. There's an excess of heat down in the bed of the sea, and for decades or even centuries, there's still going to be some melting that's going to happen because of what we've done up until now. But there is something that can be done, and I guess it just counts on that decisive leadership from some of those regions, like you say, Barry. We're all in this together, but ultimately there are a couple of nations that are worse than others, it seems.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the big elephant in the room is China's contribution to this, and China is one of the biggest players in the space. And luckily, we are seeing a lot of innovation from them when it comes to renewable energy, and we're seeing a lot of decent signs. But we need to see much more. I think the US as well is one of those big players that needs to kind of live up their game. I think most of Europe is doing a decent job when you look at their carbon emissions. It's mostly the US and China that are the two major developed countries that need to kind of lead the way in this. But also it's important that we get the developing countries on the road as well, because it's hard to go to a developing country and tell them they must now like pull back their innovation, or pull back their infrastructure, or pull back their developments for the sake of the planet, because they're in the middle of the stage where they're trying to build and they're trying to grow and they're trying to become one of those developed economies. So it's a very, very kind of difficult political conversation to have, but we need global cooperation if it's going to work. I'm quite optimistic that there are enough scientists and enough people working on cool solutions that hopefully we can start to find ways to tackle this proactively. And I don't think it's a good idea to kind of get into this idea of doomsday, the world's going to fall apart, yada. Yeah. I think we have to look at what is working well and what kind of the important forward steps we're taking, and then put more money behind that, put more energy behind that, and kind of push towards a new future. because that is the way we're going to innovate ourselves out of this. And hopefully that is the way of the future. Hopefully that's what the world looks like going forward. And we end up with a much more sustainable economy, much more sustainable global ecosystem that can take care of the planet we're on, Chad, because we're not going to Mars just yet.
Not just yet. No, this planet is still it still has so much to give us for sure. And you're completely right. It's not doomsday all over it. It is saying that this is a very serious thing we need to prioritize and care about. And if anything, I think it is just important. We've seen that change in perception over the last, let's say, decade, where the person on the street cares about sustainability and climate change a whole lot more than before, because there's a lot more information out there, and this helps for all of that. And so the more you have people being proactive and switching their energy tariffs onto sustainable tariffs, to only invest in companies who do good things, to only buy from corporations that have sustainable practices themselves, all of that kind of stuff starts shifting the needle. Because when you start to reduce the amount of demand on a certain industry, like let's say gas and oil as an example, you start to really force the hand of some of these big corporations, and that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. Those incentives are what matter. We need to be setting up our institutions and our structures and just like all the incentives that play into our daily lives in the way that's pushing us towards sustainability. We can't rely on like this moral view of just do the right thing, because it's just too many humans and people just care about themselves. You need to build the economic incentives to make it like electric cars, for example. They need to be better than gas cars, so that there's no decisions. The wind's a no-brainer to get an electric car because it's cooler, it's cheaper, it's better. And when we get to that, then it solves that problem. And so that's what we need to be thinking about, is how do we incentivize people to do the right thing because it's good for them, not because it's good for the environment, because that is the way to kind of change human behavior. And we've done it in the past. We've done it with various things across our past. And so hopefully the human collaboration and the world can come together and figure that out. But it's something we need to be keeping a very close eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. And governments are well placed to throw in some incentives, on that particular note there, Barry. I mean, I've got a electric on the way, which I'm very excited about. There's a great government scheme this side as well, incentivizing people who do have cars through their company, where the fringe benefit tax is substantially lower than a normal fuel-based vehicle. So governments are well placed to do that, and we just need to see a lot more of these incentives pop up. And we'll have a brighter future ahead, which is always exciting. Let's then move on to stuff we found interesting.
Stuff I found interesting.
Alrighty, I came across this article, Barry, and well, first things first. You've seen what I'm going to talk about. Have you heard any of it, or is this new to you? Before going into any detail.
I haven't heard this particular story, Chad, but I've got lots of thoughts on what you've written here, the Metaverse. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about this particular instance, and then we can chat about the Metaverse. Okay,
so on the Metaverse, you're a lot more well versed than I am on this Metaverse. But I found this crazy, Barry. So we had a virtual concert. And it turns out this is not the first one that's happened. There's been a couple of others of a couple of artists which we'll mention, but a virtual concert in a very loved game that we've spoken about before, Fortnite, and the artist in question is the heavyweight of the pop scene, Ariana Grande, who can pull a crowd more than Ariana Grande can. And it just seems like this crazy event to me, where you have this, like I say, virtual concert in this virtual world. You have everyone able to kind of interact with each other in limited ways, as they move through these specific scenes and levels. I've got some visuals popping up on the screen, and this is actually in the lead up to the concert. So this is before she enters the arena, obviously, where you can make your avatar her if you'd like. But effectively, she then pops in at some stage, Barry, and and fills the sky and starts singing. And obviously it's all kind of pre-recorded, but in some ways it really is this kind of magical affair, in a way where your avatar can kind of like, you have various moves that you can pre-program, and you can dance and do all sorts of things, and you can kind of chase her as well, like follow her through as she moves through the different worlds and different settings in this concert, in this virtual concert. And right at the end, she kind of grabs this mallet and just slams the world, and everything comes crashing down, and that's the end of the concert. I just found it fascinating that you had this event, and obviously a massive turnout. Some of the other artists that have been in Fortnite before include Diplo, Marshmello, Travis Scott, who attracted an audience of 12 million, Barry. Just imagine that many people in a concert type setting. And so these are obviously all of the opportunities that are opened up by these kind of technologies. Of course, it's not the real thing. You're looking at an animated Ariana Grande. But I found it fascinating. I really found it fascinating that there was so much demand for this, and people seem to really like it.
Chad, I think Fortnite is potentially one of the most innovative teams that I think are on the planet right now. They're doing such cool stuff, and they've kind of transcended the game Fortnite. So for those who don't know, Fortnite started as this game, which was this first-person shooter, became incredibly popular. For a good couple of years, it was the #1 game, and they built this ginormous community. And we could talk about Fortnite forever, Chad, because they've got this amazing microeconomy where people buy like all these gizmos and gadgets, and they're making all their money through those in-game purchases. They've built this really cool live event experience, like you're speaking about, and the fact that you get Ariana Grande, one of the top 2 or 3 pop stars in the world, to come and do a concert on here for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, Chad, is just absolutely incredible. And it points to the future. We're going to get to the metaverse just now. It points to the future of these events, Chad. And like when you can pull in 12 million people into a concert, Chad, why would you go and do a stadium, right? Why would you go and do a stadium for 90,000 when you can do it for 12 million? And this really does open up these experiences and these opportunities to people who might not have the opportunity to go into a concert themselves. And maybe they're in a remote part of the world. Doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter who you are. You can come into this little virtual reality and interact as this avatar, as whoever you want to be. So I think it's very exciting, Chad. It's very interesting. I'd be curious to try one of these concerts one day and see what it feels like as a viewer. But I think it's really fascinating. I think it's the first of many. We're going to see lots of these going forward, Chad.
Yeah, like just as we're watching this now, Barry, there's some other kind of like personal elements as well. So you'll be following her, and obviously for everyone, I guess they're as close as each other is, and she sort of turns around and blows a kiss, and you catch the kiss, and it's all these kind of like little personal elements which I thought were really quite interesting too. And in terms of the price element of it, I don't know if you had to pay to attend this concert, but from what I can see here, if you wanted to buy that Ariana Fortnite skin, so you wanted your avatar to look like her, you had to pay 2,000 V-Bucks, which is about $20. So you can just imagine how many of these millions of people for the event, if it was free, went in and bought their skin, and that translates into quite a lot of V-Bucks.
Yeah, and that's the major innovation that Fortnite. I think Epic Games own them. I think Epic Games is the owner. That's the major innovation they've brought to the space, is that this idea that these games are free to play, or these concerts are free to attend, and they're monetized in other ways. They're monetized by giving you extra virtual benefits to make your character look a certain way, or to give you extra powers, or give you extra lives, or whatever the story is. And they've built this entire virtual economy on the back of this game, Chad. This is not just a game anymore. It's a community. It's for those who are in the community. It's where you go and spend hours and hours every single day. It's where your friends are. It's where you sit on Discord and you chat and you catch up and you interact with your friends through this game. And so they've really become so much more than what you think of when you think of online gaming. It really is a community. And these events prove it, because it proves that you've got this audience there who are looking for entertainment, who are looking for new virtual experiences. And then it's going to get more and more interactive, Chad. You mentioned blowing the kiss and all these individualistic aspects. That's one of the beauties of this. You can feel like you're right in front of Ariana Grande in a way that you can't if you're in the row Z in the stadium, when like you have to use your binoculars to see what's going on, right?
Yeah.
It's a very different experience. And Chad, if you imagine this sort of thing with a sports match, for example, what if you could sit like courtside at a basketball game, or right in the center line in a rugby game, whatever the story is? It opens up all these opportunities for these virtual events, and you can have the best seat in the house. You can sit next to Ariana Grande as she serenades you, Chad. And the moment we start putting VR goggles on and it gets much more real, then this game changes entirely.
Yeah, and I was quite interested that for this particular one, it does look like it was all sort of pre-recorded and pre-animated and all that kind of thing. From what I saw from the clips of the Travis Scott one, it looks like it was more of a case of, there was an actual stage and he was performing live, from what I understand. So I was very surprised about that kind of pre-recorded nature and people and there being appetite for it, because it's one thing to go and watch something that's been pre-recorded, pre-animated, arranged, and something that's completely different to watch someone doing something live, which obviously there's limitations to, but ultimately it's early days still, I suppose, and I guess the technology needs to get there, which I'm sure it will eventually. And like you say, in terms of Epic Games, they certainly are trying to build out this metaverse, because basically there's a race now. Who establishes the metaverse that is mostly populated first? And when that happens, ultimately it'll be hard to pull all of those people out onto other platforms, just like we've seen with other things, just like we've seen with WhatsApp as an example. If all your friends are using one platform, it's really hard to move it.
Yeah, definitely, and that's the kind of the key points of these last couple of weeks, Chad. Is we've heard a lot about the metaverse in inverted commas from a lot of different companies, notably Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook.
Yep.
They've been talking about the metaverse for a long time now, and when they bought Oculus, the VR company, a couple of years ago, their whole kind of number one North Star was to create that metaverse. They wanted to create this virtual world where you had your avatar and you interacted in virtual space rather than physical space. And Chad, I know you said you didn't know much about it, but you actually do, because you've watched or read Ready Player One, right? That's the entire metaverse right there. That is the idea of the metaverse, is that you put on these goggles or you interact through a screen of some sort, and you embody this avatar and you go and you do everything you would do in the real world, but in a virtual world. Yeah. And when you start having transactions available, when you can do events, when you can communicate, when you can do all these things in the metaverse, it becomes a very, very different world, Chad. And I think COVID has kind of pushed this even further than it would have been, because we're all sitting at home. We're dying for social interaction. We're dying for opportunities to connect with people, to meet people, and to go to concerts and all of these things. And so I think this sort of metaverse is inevitable. And how long it takes, I've got no idea. Like you mentioned, it's a fine line between trying to push technology further than what's capable. I think for Ariana Grande, if she tries to do a live concert and it doesn't work or something goes wrong, it looks very bad. So you got to try and like temper expectations a little bit. Yep. But I think in 20 years' time or in 50 years' time, Jay, we'll be looking at a very, very different like state of affairs when it comes to events, when it comes to transactions, when it comes to entertainment, because how much of it is going to be our avatar and how much of it is going to be ourselves. And that's a very interesting philosophical and social question to answer, because obviously there's pros and cons to both. And a lot of people are scared of the virtual reality because they feel like the physical reality is going to lose out and you're going to lose what it means to be human. Jay, we're not supposed to be avatars. We're supposed to be out in the world kind of interacting. But who knows what's going to happen over the next couple of decades.
Yeah, I guess so much of that depends on the speed of data transfer and the speed of processing. And if the last couple of decades are anything to go by, my goodness, are we in for a ride and a half. Barry, what did you find interesting this week?
Chad, I found something that is fucking crazy. And you have to pull up the picture here because I just can't believe it. It's the world's tallest dog, Chad. And for those who aren't listening, you have to come to aren't watching, you have to come to the video and check this out. There's a Great Dane, which is over 7 foot tall, Chad. And if you look at that picture, tell me that
What's that
that's
in
not
meters?
Photoshop. Oh, I don't know. We have to quickly do a conversion there. This dog looks like a horse, and
Oh
it's
my
sitting on the
gosh.
couch. Oh my goodness me! One of the family members is giving it a good cuddle, and she looks like an absolute pipsqueak next to this dog. It is absolutely ginormous. And
Lounging in
Chad,
the
I don't know
sun.
about you, but can you imagine having this size dog in your house? I can't imagine it.
Oh my gosh. I mean, Great Danes of all breeds, it had to be a Great Dane. They are just huge. You just see them walking out in the park and you're like, did this person literally bring a donkey? They are huge. And this one, I mean, I don't know my feet to meters conversion. But gosh, just looking at this doggo lounging on the couch, yeah, it's just crazy. I'm personally a fan of the smaller kind of dog. Anything that is below the knee, maybe even like half knee height, the smaller the better for me. But I know people feel very passionate about that. What's your particular what are you keen on, Barry?
Chad, I always think it's interesting. I think people like what they've grown up with. I've got that
Yeah.
kind of theory because people, if you grow up with a big dog, you kind of like big dogs. If you grow up with a small dog, you like small dogs.
Yeah.
So I've always grown up with big dogs who've kind of mostly been outside, very rarely came in the house. And so that's kind of what I think of when I think of a dog as a pet.
Yeah.
But I've got friends who've had a tiny little dog that sleeps on the bed with them and is always inside, and they think that's the way to do it. So I've got no strong opinions either way, Chad, but my childhood has brought me up to like the slightly bigger dogs. Not 7 foot though. Let's not get crazy. Not 7 foot, just a decent size that doesn't like knock you over when it comes running towards you.
Yeah, of course. And, naturally, I guess the country that you're staying in helps as well. Try and have a place big enough to have a Great Dane in London. If you are not Mark Zuckerberg or Ariana Grande, for that matter. Yeah, challenging. Shall we move on then, Barry?
Let's do it. Let's look ahead.
Looking ahead. Alrighty, I wanted to kick this one off with a little bit of tech, Barry, and I haven't probed too deeply into this yet, but Canon released their new flagship camera, the EOS R3. Obviously, you and I are both big fans of Peter McKinnon, one of their ambassadors, and he kind of teased a little bit. He's not allowed yet to actually show us what it can do in terms of actual footage and pictures. But I was intrigued, so I went onto the website and had a little bit of a look through the specs. There's one feature here which got my tech nerd super excited. The idea, Barry, of looking in your viewfinder, okay, looking at a particular part of the frame and the camera automatically focusing to where you look.
Wow.
How crazy
That
is
is that is crazy, man. So that almost makes that experience absolutely frictionless.
Yeah.
If you can just, like you say, look at the place that you are focusing on as your eye would normally do. Without having to adjust things or set things and like make all these adjustments on the fly, it probably means you can get those action photos even better, Chad, because
Yeah.
you're much quicker to get that focus on, so you can take that picture before you lose that moment. And that is amazing. That almost means you got a camera looking back at you as well and tracking your
Exactly.
eyes, and then using that. It's a double camera both ways.
It's crazy technology. I'm shocked by it. It is super exciting for me because, if you've ever used, mirrorless camera or even a DSLR, you always have to have like a focus box or obviously somewhere that you are telling the camera where to focus. And, the ones I've used, you've normally got like a joystick, or you can use your touch screen at the back. But there's naturally going to be a lag, and it's always not going to be super intuitive. Being able to look literally at the part of the frame you want to focus on, it just feels like it's going to be so natural to use. And because of some of the other functions of this camera, it's equipped for those who are into like sports and just like high speed stuff. As you say, to be able to look at something as you would like look at a car or look at somebody snowboarding or whatever the case is, and then be able to take advantage of these super fast frame rates that this camera can do. I honestly think, obviously, I've not seen how it's implemented yet, and how it comes across for the professionals who use it. But I think Canon has struck gold here. I think this is an incredible feature, and over and above that, it makes me question the skill that is required in photography. If you've got enough money to buy this camera, do you really need to know anything about photography, or work hard at getting these kind of shots? It's an interesting kind of conversation to have, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one we've had before, Chad, about how
Yep.
when artificial intelligence and these new technologies start to creep up on creativity, how are we going to kind of keep it in the sense that, like, we need skill and you need talent, you need hard work to make this actually happen. But that's what great technology does, Chad. It kind of melts into the background and just kind of does a lot of the stuff for you without you even realizing it. So a lot of the great technology across our world is kind of, it's very silent and it's very in the back, and it kind of just does what it needs to do. And when you remove that friction, it opens up those opportunities to so many more people. And so I don't think it's going to completely change photography to the sense that I'll be able to pick up a random camera and become Peter McKinnon, right? I think there's still a lot to create with what he does.
Yeah.
But it's going to make it a very interesting conversation when it comes to, like, how did you get your photos, and exactly what went into getting them. I think that these sorts of technologies push us to think a bit more carefully about what is creativity, and what is photography, for example. And if your gear is getting in the way of capturing that moment, then that's not a good thing. And so if it can get out of the way a little bit and give you that space to capture those really candid pieces, and just make sure you don't miss out on those bits and pieces, Chad, when you're busy fiddling with the box or fiddling with the
Yep.
joystick to try and make it work. So I'm very curious to see what happens with it. And Chad, I want to ask, are you going to get one of these when they
Oh
come
my
out?
gosh. I don't think I would be, I could, you'd have to mortgage probably 3 houses to get this, Barry. Yeah, it certainly isn't within my reach, I don't think. And also it's a big thing. It's probably going to be about 3 times the size as the camera that I'm currently
wow.
using. So, it's big, it's chunky, it's for the pros. It's going to be expensive. There's no doubt about it. But you never know. I mean, as things progress, obviously the cost always comes down. Who knows in 3 years' time when the new model is released, and there's specials left, right, and center on gear that is still very good. Who knows? We could maybe talk at that point in time. But for now, Barry, I'm not planning any upgrades anytime soon.
I'm proud of you, Chad. I'm proud of you because I know you're a gear geek, and I know you'll be itching to get this. So I'm very proud to see some restraint from your side. And it just means you got to make some more YouTube videos, buddy, so you can get that AdSense and get that camera, bud.
Don't you worry. One is being released tomorrow as we speak.
Yes.
So yeah,
Love it.
there's been a bit of a drought there, and it's it's needed some tension. But we're going to talk about it in the next segment, Barry. Develop and grow.
Develop and grow.
Why don't you start, seeing as you kind of led into it there, Chad? Start with your piece, and I'll finish with my quote afterwards.
Are you sure? Okay, fine. Let me hijack the section then. Yeah, basically just throwing it out there. It's still kind of early stage thoughts that I've been ruminating on, I guess, for the last little bit. And yeah, basically I feel like at the moment I'm at this point where I've kind of stopped doing like all of my hobbies because I've got too many hobbies to do. And so instead of swinging out of bed in the morning, waking up super early, tackling that thing with passion, and just wanting to learn and further and grow on a particular field or facet of one of these hobbies, I just get up super late, roll out of bed, hop into the shower, and start work. And basically it's just not a good vibe, pretty much. And so I've kind of listed some of the things that I do. Work obviously being the biggest chunk of that, because you've got to pay the bills ultimately. And I think I'm in the same position as I would probably say a majority of the population, where you do something because you want to earn money. You don't do something because you you absolutely love it. It's not your like North Star. It's not the thing that that you wanted to do from the time you were a little kid. And I think that's just the reality. I think some people are great, have taken the risks and have made it for themselves in those fields. But I think the majority of people are doing something simply because they have to pay bills and not because it's what they want to do in life. So anyway, that's work. That's the biggest piece. Obviously, I've always been interested in music and singing, and I haven't sang in ages, Barry. I've got the guitar behind me. I've got the piano in the cupboard, and ultimately that's just sitting there. It's not getting used. So I want to get better at music in all fields of music. I want to produce stuff. I want to learn how Logic Pro works and do all of this kind of stuff. That's all on there. The podcast is obviously another one. That's where you and I are here today, focusing on the podcast. Obviously takes up a lot of time in the week too. YouTube, we just chatted about that. I've got this fledgling little YouTube channel, which one or two videos has done some cool things in the past, and it's very exciting. It's on a good path, but ultimately, if you're not spending time putting stuff out there, you can stagnate and drop back down. I love my photography. That's another thing, Barry. I've got my Instagram, and I'm neglecting that as well in a way. I'd like to be posting more stuff there and spending more time and curate like all of these images that I take that just ultimately live on my computer and don't go anywhere else. Then you've got the more kind of human elements. You've got the fitness. So like you've got your hockey, Barry. I've been involved in a tag rugby team not too long ago. There's a cycling club down the road who wake up and meet at like 6:10 in the morning. So there's all the fitness elements as well, and being able to dedicate time and attention to that too. If I carry on at this rate, we're going to be here all day, Barry. But there's the relationship, which is incredibly important. With my fiance and spending that time as well on that. The social life, wanting to learn a new language, like trying to read and cover through books and learn new things. Wanting to talk to your friends about sports because you've actually spent time sitting in front of the TV screen, learning the leagues, learning the teams, learning the players, talking about particular moments and because you love sport and enjoy sport. All of that kind of stuff. And then we spoke about Fortnite. I don't play Fortnite specifically, but when you do play a game with a friend, on your PlayStation and feel like you need to be better at this because if you just spent time on it, you could aim better, you could get more kills, you could run faster, switch weapons, all of that kind of stuff. And so there's this endless level of things that I want to do. But I'm at the point in time, Barry, where I've got just too much, and I'm kind of now in that just procrastinating stage where there's just too much. It's become kind of overwhelming and not fun anymore. And a little observation that I had as well that I wanted to kind of get your thought on, because I think you and I are a bit similar in this regard, is that correct me if I'm wrong, I'm quite like impressionable as well. So I'll watch a YouTube video as an example and be like, I can do that. I can really do that, and I can do that quite well. So let me do that. Let me start that. Listen to a podcast. I can do that too. I can. Yeah, let's do that. Let's start a podcast. Come across an Instagram post and see someone put some like high production stuff on photos. Hey, I've done photography before. Maybe I can do that. And so what I've done is I've kind of accumulated all of these interests because I'm impressionable. And sure, I enjoy them when I'm doing them. But I do think I've created a monster. And I'd like your thoughts on it, Barry.
Oh, Chad, I've got so many thoughts. Let's first take a breath. Whew, that is a lot of stuff. And I think for the vast majority of our listeners, Chad, they don't think this way. A lot of people will just have their one hobby, right, for example, and they have a very simple life, and they just kind of make sure, cool, doing the work and doing their one hobby maybe, and that's kind of it. But I'm exactly the same as you, and we're in a little minority called the Generalist, Chad, and we have to deal with these sorts of existential dilemmas sometimes where we feel like we've got so much to do and just not enough time. I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think that I completely get where you're coming from. I've got two major points that I've been thinking about in this story because I've also found myself in this situation a lot of times throughout my life. And I think it's your curiosity and it's your confidence more so than just impressionable. That's what I want to say. I don't think you're impressionable. I just think you're very curious. And I think that's a great place to be because you see something in the world that you really like and you think is cool, and you want to go and do it yourself. And we've chatted about being the person in the arena, actually trying these things and actually going for it and whatnot. And this podcast is a great example. The only way this podcast works is because we're both these people, Chad. Otherwise, we'd have nothing to talk about. If you look at the range of topics we cover on this podcast, it's absolutely insane. And the only way it's possible is because we love so many different things and we're able to bring all that to the table. So the first thing I want to say is that it's impossible to do all of this at once. We have to let go of that ideal that you're going to be this amazing musician, YouTuber, photographer, podcaster, husband, all of this at the same time. It just doesn't work like that. And so the way that I like to think about it is that there are seasons. Every hobby has a season, right? And so, for example, you might find that at the moment you're not investing much in your YouTube because you're investing more time with your fiance, more time with the house hunting, or whatever the story is. And I think that's okay. When you realize that, you can say, cool, all right, I've put these things on the back burner for a little bit. I'm going to come back to them. They're waiting for me. But I'm just focusing on 2 or 3 at the moment, which are in their season right now. And at a certain time, you'll feel that itch to do something different, and you'll put these away and you'll pick up the next couple as part of their season. And I think that's the way to do it as generalist, is that understand that every part of your life, and you'll have weeks and you'll have months where you don't do certain things, but you can always pick those back up. And that kind of thinking about in seasons has really helped me, because otherwise you start being panicked about, oh, I haven't uploaded a YouTube video in 2 months, or I haven't done a photo in this long, or I haven't spoken to a friend in this long, etc. And you can drive yourself silly if you kind of keep overthinking it in that way. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that often we need a project or an objective in order to get us to do these things, right? So it's very easy to say, cool, I've got a piano, I've got a guitar, I must just practice. I must make time to practice and then go practice. But it's hard to do that if you don't have a goal, if you don't have an objective or some sort of project. And so what I always tell people, if they want to do something creative, if they want to write or they want to play music or whatever, pick a goal. Say to your friend, listen, I'm going to play you Ed Sheeran's Perfect in a month's time, and I want you to hold me accountable, and I'm going to have that goal, and I'm going to post it on my Instagram or on my YouTube or whatever the story is, and that is going to be the goal I'm going to work towards, because that's going to give you the motivation to actually, like you say, get up in the morning before work and get 20 minutes of practice in, or get home after work and have that going forward. One of the reasons this podcast works, again, Chad, is because we kind of hold ourselves accountable that every single week we're trying to put something out, right? If we didn't have that once a week schedule, it'd be very easy to say, oh, Chad, I don't feel like it today, buddy. Can we just skip it? Or I've got too much work going on or whatever. And sure, we've had those weeks in the past when things have got crazy, but for the most part, even if we didn't feel like it, we got in front of the mic, and the moment we start talking, Chad, we realize, oh, wait, this is fun. This is actually cool. I'm glad we're doing this. Yep. But sometimes that activation energy is difficult if you don't have an objective or some sort of accountability. So, Chad, if I were you, I would kind of look at your long laundry list of all these things and pick 2 or 3 that you're going to decide, cool, now is the season for these 2 or 3. And I don't know, make it 2 or 3 weeks maybe as the season, and then set one goal or one objective for each of those projects. And I assure you, if you do those 2 things, you'll find more motivation, you'll be able to find more time, and you won't feel as guilty about the ones that are on the back burner, because you've made an intentional decision to say to yourself, cool, these are the 3 that I'm going to focus on for this season. And at the end of the season, then I can switch it up. Yeah. What do you think of that?
I think that's a great idea. I think the guilt element will definitely help. So I think that as a suggestion in terms of dealing with, because when you're not, I feel like when I'm not progressing on all of these at once, I'm kind of like, well, what am I doing? What's the point? What am I doing? And so yeah, I think I've been frustrated for that reason, and it's unnecessary, because it's just not possible. There's just too many things for one person. But I do have in the back of my mind this other thought of, like, how amazing could you be at any one of these particular things if you only had the one? And so, like, if you were to spend the next 4 years like looking at just one of these and perfecting the art, like how amazing could that be? Like you could actually make an impact, I feel. Where, having this kind of spray and what is the right terminology? Just spray and see what you hit kind of approach. I just kind of feel like, is there any point in investing in kind of like half-assing it? Like if you're going to do it, are you going to do it? Or you're not going to do it properly? So that's kind of where I'm at now, and I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think it's a good point, and it brings up a deeper question that I don't know if you've asked yourself yet, Chad, is that are these hobbies or are these actual professional endeavors, right? So for example, like your YouTube, I know you're dying to make that a professional thing. You're dying to kind of go that creative route. And so the question you're asking is the right question, is that if I dedicated all of my energy to that, would I be able to make it? And that's an impossible question to answer. And like you say, the practicalities of life mean that sometimes it's not possible for us. But if it's a hobby, then that shouldn't be part of the conversation. If it's a hobby, then it should just be for fun, right? It should just be cool. I want to improve and I want to get better, but I don't think I need to spend all of my time doing it. I've had quite an interesting kind of experience the last couple of months, because for those who don't know, I've started a writing business, and I've been writing thousands of words a day for the last 8 months, right?
Average number of words a day, Barry?
Probably 8 to 10,000 words a day. Wow. Like crazy amounts, right? And that has been, it's been wonderful because the business has been growing, and it's been really exciting to kind of grow something of my own and build a business that I'm proud of. But at the same time, my enjoyment for writing is struggling, right? It's fragile, because you're doing this now as a job. You're doing this as the grind. And so the question here is that if you invest all this time into this hobby, do you lose that magic? Do you lose that magic of being able to enjoy what you're doing and enjoy the creative aspect of it? And so there's no right or wrong answer here. I think it's great to dive into these hobbies if you want to make it professional, but you got to have some very difficult conversation with yourself and do some internal work to figure out, am I doing this because I enjoy it and because it's fun, or am I doing it because I can see a career here? And if I see a career here, then I'm all for it. Then I say you dedicate more energy and time to it. And I think, Chad, maybe that's the kind of thinking you have to go through to figure out this YouTube thing and the photography thing. Is it something you actually want to do professionally? And if so, you're going to have to make sacrifices.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. The work I've done so far says no, I'm not looking at this to be any of these things to be a career. But I'm still at that level of like perfection where, like, you want to do one thing and you want to do it really well. So anyway, that helps, Barry. I appreciate that. The seasons, picking a season, picking one or two things for a season, which is like a 2 to 3 week period with an actionable goal. I think that helps. And sorry for all of the listeners who might not be able to relate to this. I mean, hopefully you can relate to some of it. I mean, everyone's juggling lots of different things in life. And I don't know. I think it is a good example that you can kind of adapt to your personal circumstances. So thanks for that, Barry. We'll have to see what the next season is on this side of the pond.
Well, Chad, we'll be supporting you all the way, and I know Across the Pond listeners are always dying to see what you're doing. So please go and subscribe to Chad Sturley on YouTube if you haven't already. I know there's some stuff coming there. And Chad, we will be behind you no matter what you decide, buddy. Just keep at it. I think the life of a generalist is a lonely one and a difficult one, but I think it's very rewarding. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm exactly the same as you. I've always got too much on my plate, and to be honest, I think it's a better way to live life. So don't beat yourself up. Of course, you're not going to become world class at 14 things, but you'll figure it out. You'll find a way to make it work. Let's end off, Chad, with one last quote that I found from a Buddhist teacher, I believe, a guy called Geshe Shawopa. And it was one of those quotes that hit me in the face and kind of gave me a little bit of an existential moment, Chad, because I'm very good at worrying about the future. I think you're the same in this respect as well, as we both overthink things a lot. Mm-hmm. And I will find myself lying in bed, running through scenarios in my head about what could happen. What could happen is this, and if this happens, and what could happen, and worrying about 1,000 different futures, Chad, about what could happen if different things occurred and if I made different decisions. And that worry doesn't serve us at all. it really doesn't help us. It just gets in the way. It makes us feel things. It gets in the way of us being present. And so this quote really struck me. And it said, "Do not rule over imaginary kingdoms of endlessly proliferating possibilities." I love that writing. It's so dramatic and so kind of vivid. And it's so true. We always have these thousands of possibilities as to what could happen. And we kind of run through these in our head and trying to predict the future almost. But the world is too uncertain for that. And we can drive ourselves crazy if we don't focus on what's in the present. And so it was a good reminder for me to kind of stop worrying about the future, stop worrying about 4, 5, 6 chess moves ahead, and let's just enjoy the moment and the present. Because when you do that, the future kind of takes care of itself. And what's going to happen is going to happen. Like you might think you have this incredible influence to be able to change everything in the future, but there's too many variables in this thing. And so, don't rule over imaginary kingdoms of endlessly proliferating possibilities.
What a great way to end. Great quote, and it's an important reminder. I don't think you can overstate how important this reminder is to live in the present, not to look back as well, because we also like to look back and we like to think of the past better than what it was, because those emotions are no longer as real as they were when we were going through them. So we like to kind of romanticize sometimes about the past as well. We're not there. We're not in the future. We're where we are right now. And I know that is so, so cliche and it sounds so stupid, but it's important. It really is important. So thanks for bringing that up again, Barry. I don't think we can overstate the importance of it. And a great place to end this week's episode of Across the Pond.
Yeah, definitely. I've had a lot of fun, Chad. It's always been good to chat. And hopefully we've got some value for anyone listening. If you've watched or listened this far, as always, you are awesome. And we really appreciate it. And we love to hear your thoughts. Please let us know what you think. Like, what do you think of these topics? Do you have any advice for Chad as he picks his next season? How do you help us get you a better episode? At the end of the day, we're doing this for you guys. So please, we're on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and all of the options are available to you. Click on a link in one of the bios and you can come and send a voice note. We'd love to hear some of your thoughts, because we know you're listening out there, and we get these messages every now and then that say we're really enjoying the podcast, and it's kind of out of the blue, Chad, because we don't even know. So let us know where you're listening from. Let us know what you think, because Across the Pond is growing and I'm loving it, Chad. So all the best for the next few to come.
Absolutely, yeah. Because otherwise, we're just talking out to our own metaverse, Barry, and we're just not getting anything back. So yeah, please do let us know how things are going. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
Pond across the